Buffalo Mountain is a well-known hang gliding site in the Ouachita Mountains of Oklahoma, but I'd never flown there myself. The site is easily reachable within a day from my home airport in southeast Texas, though, so I decided a trip to see it in my trike was in order. The forested ridges of the Ouachitas would be very different scenery than the rocky desert mountains of West Texas I flew over last year. My plan would be to head north from Wharton to the western end of the Ouachitas and follow these ridges east, making a pass on Buffalo Mountain along the way. I'd stop for the night in Mena just across the Arkansas state line. The trip would take about 6.5 hours, a little more than I was comfortable doing with a single fuel stop, so I'd make stops in Palestine and Paris. I'd set out the next morning for a more direct route home. Due to headwinds, the return trip would take about 7.5 hours, with fuel stops planned in Gilmer and Navasota. I planned the trip during a period of extended dry weather over the whole region, so I wouldn't have to worry about clouds, precipitation, or visibility. Winds in the mountains would be light, at least at the surface, for the trip out, and though they'd be picking up the next day, I'd be long gone before they became an issue. I was airborne at 7:45 a.m. and enjoyed smooth air at 2,000 feet all the way to my first stop. The proximity of the trees to the runway at Palestine made me nervous, and surface winds were getting a bit gusty when I took off. There was only a slight right cross component, but it was enough to create some trash as I climbed above the tree line. In retrospect, it might have been better to taxi a ways down the runway before going to full throttle to rotate past the trees. Just west of the airport is a NASA high-altitude scientific balloon base. Since there weren't any clouds and I was dressed warm, I climbed up to 5,500 feet for my next leg to stay above the rising thermals and continue to enjoy smooth air. I found that solar farms are just as common in northeast Texas as in the southeast. Winds aloft were light, and I made good time to my next stop in Paris. Cox Field is a former World War II training base with 3 runways but little traffic at present. The manager here told me the airport is undergoing expansion, which included these under-construction hangars. After departing Cox, I flew over a few points of interest in Paris. The town features a 65-foot scale replica of the Eiffel Tower topped with a red cowboy hat, though it's pretty small from 1,000 feet. Here's a natural gas power plant. This factory makes Huggies diapers. And this one makes Campbell's soup. 13 miles north of Paris on 271 brought me to the Red River, marking the border between Texas and Oklahoma. The ridges of the Ouachita started low but gradually gained height. Winds may have been light at the surface, but they were 20 miles per hour aloft, so I kept plenty of height above the mountains to avoid mechanical turbulence from the upwind ridges. The valley opened up at this point, and I flew out into it a bit to get a better look at the wind farm on this ridge, but I didn't want to get too close since I was downwind of it. Turning north brought me to Buffalo Mountain. I can see why it's a popular site for hang gliding and paragliding, as it seems made for ridge soaring.
Sparkling trees of silver foam cast shadows soft in winter home, swaying branches breaking sound, lonely forest trembling ground. Masquerading leaves of blue run circles round the morning dew. Patterns understood by you, reaching out beyond and before. Time like gold dust brings mine down to levels hidden underground. Say a few words to the wind, that's all that's left of winter's friend. Reaching the snow in the days of the cold, casting a spell out of ice. Now that you're gone, the summer's too long, and it seems like the end of my life.
I arrived at Mena Intermountain Municipal Airport around 3:30 p.m., 2 hours before sunset. The north-south runway was closed, so I landed to the west. Although winds were light, there was some trash from the hills to the south, and it wasn't my best landing. The airport has a storied past as the base of former TWA pilot Barry Seal's drug smuggling operation in the 80s, as well as the site of alleged CIA Nicaraguan Contra training operations. But today it's mostly known for its extensive array of aircraft maintenance and repair shops, unusual for a town of Mena's size. The FBO has 2 courtesy cars, and let me take one overnight since both were available. And after spending the night in Mena, I was ready for another early start the next day for my return. I was in the air at 8 a.m., and though it was a little bumpy down low, it smoothed out once I climbed above the mountains. The hills rising through the haze here were worthy of a postcard. These look like timber plantations, which I'd never seen in hilly terrain before. The town of DeQueen here and its airport were an alternate for me in case I wasn't able to secure ground transportation in Mena. Once again crossing the Red River, this time back into Texas. I had to use this trip as an opportunity to cross one more coal plant off my list, specifically the 1 gigawatt Robert Welsh power plant near Pittsburgh, Texas. The air was starting to get active near the ground when I reached Gilmer, and the slight downslope of the runway didn't help my landing. At this point, I'd be needing to fly at 4,500 feet to stay above the thermals, but I was facing a 25-mile-per-hour headwind up there. This was my longest single leg of the trip, and I didn't want to push into my reserve fuel, so dropped down into lighter winds. Conditions for landing certainly weren't any more merciful in Navasota. Winds aloft were a little lighter by this point, plus I had plenty of excess fuel, so flew my last leg back to Wharton at 4,500 feet. I returned at 4:30 p.m. with an hour of daylight to spare. I was hoping for a decent landing after my rough last view, but alas, I bounced the nose. In any event, this trip was a fun adventure with very different scenery than anything I'd flown over before in a trike, and I was able to cross off 2 more states and another coal plant.